Hello, I'm Mark Elstob, and this is the Sirens of Audio.
Big Finish, for the love of Helsinki. G'day audiophiles, this is the Sirens of Audio, the show that explores the universe of Doctor Who and other cult TV in the audio medium. I'm Dwayne.
And I'm Philip. G'day Dwayne, g'day audiophiles.
G'day Philip, good to see you. How's things?
Things are great, lots happening, but that's always good, and catching up with life and family after some busy events and getting ready for the next one, and even possibly the one and two after that.
Oh. You look like you've caught up on a bit of rest anyway, so that's good.
Yeah, I'm feeling so much better.
That's good to hear. Today is going to be, we're actually doing it. We're doing what we said we would do, and every month look back on the previous month of Big Finish releases, so we're going to do that again today. We've got a special treat this time because one of the releases was the Sirens of Time Redux, and recently we had the opportunity to speak with Nick Briggs, and we spoke to him about that, so we're going to insert that chat with Nick Briggs at the end of the episode. So, but before we do that, we're going to skip the rabbit hole. Philip, sorry about that. We're going to go straight into the month that was, because we have got a few different things to talk about.
Come in, my young friends, and be most welcome here.
From Big Finish Productions, The War Master, Future Phantoms.
There seems to be no pattern to the thing. Several occasions every year, sometimes just once or twice, there are those who happen after dusk to be strolling through the hallways of St. Simeon's College, Cambridge, and who chance there upon a certain open door. From within, there is always to be seen the welcoming glow of firelight, and there is to be heard a certain voice which issues an invitation to step inside. Those who have accepted this request claim to have encountered a most unusual gentleman, and to have been told a tale of a bizarre and troubling kind. Rumours go on that those who have heard his stories return to their ordinary lives, ever so slightly altered.
Big Finish, for the love of stories.
The first release for November was The War Master, Future Phantoms. And what was interesting about this release was that it was the last War Master release produced by Scott Hancock. And he must have had a few in the can when he left, because I think this was recorded back in 22, so a couple of years ago. And just want to get your thoughts, because I know I'll give you my thoughts in a second, but I want to start with you because I know how much you love this one.
Yeah, well, I always loved The War Master, and Derek Jacobi I've always loved. I've seen him on stage a number of times, as well as one of my all-time favourite movies is called Dead Again, which is a Kenneth Branagh film with Kenneth Branagh and his wife Emma Thompson and Derek Jacobi, and I've watched that countless times and just love it. So Derek Jacobi, his voice is just amazing. His performance as the Master is just chilling, and these stories in particular are just astounding in terms of they scared the life out of me. And I don't regularly get scared, but I think just Derek being able to tell ghost stories in a really powerful way, these are 4 really chilling ghost stories, all slightly different, all with a slightly different bent, but just superbly done. The writers, Jonathan Barnes, James Goss, Lizzie Hopley, and Tim Foley, are all just amazing and really, really worth listening to. So if you like a bit of fear and a good ghost story, these are the ones to listen to.
Excellent. I enjoyed listening to this too, because I always love listening to Derek Jacobi as the War Master. The only thing I struggled with was I think I may have missed Well, I'd totally forgotten what this story's sort of basis was. So I was kind of wondering all the way right to the very end what is going on here to a certain extent. But in the end, it all makes sense. There's a great conceit to the plot, which is really interesting, and I think it paid off really nicely for me, even though I was confused for most of the way through. I think was I supposed to be confused, or was I supposed to remember what
you were supposed to be? You were supposed to be trying to work out what was going on. It had moments of Sharda to me. Actually, it was making me think of Professor Chronotis in his office with all his books and just people coming in. It very much felt that sort of feel to me, except it was a bad one. But I mean, part of the joy is just having Derek Jacobi playing other characters in his own stories. And of course, it really was the Master, but because the Master always wears disguises. But sometimes it took me a bit of a while to work out it was Derek Jacobi, because some of the accents he put on in some of those stories, the one with the train, I think was the first one. No, it's not. I forget one. There's one with the train, and just that one was just really stunning in terms of this accent he was putting on, and I hadn't realised it was him. It took me a while to click.
It was the last one, I think. It was Signal and I'll Come to You. That was Tim Foley.
There we go. Tim Foley.
Yeah. So all the writers there. Yep.
I was just saying. I mean, those 4 writers are all magnificent.
Yes.
But all told a totally different type of ghost story. All ghost stories, very different punchlines, very different themes. Yeah, just loved them.
If there was one story that stood out to me, it was probably Lizzie Hopley's The Sitter. I always connect with her writing, so that one really got me. They were all exceptional, but that one was a cut above for me personally. Mark Elstob had a role in this, and we're going to get Mark appear in a few different releases this month, I think. Robert Glenister was there too, so he was in The Caves of Androzani, and he was also in a 8th Doctor story called Absolution. So it was good to see him back again.
Life on Mars with John Seamus is what I always think of him as.
Well, that's his brother. That's Philip Glenister.
Oh.
Yeah, different.
Sorry, it's a different one. I don't think I'd ever connected that. I thought they were the same one.
No, different.
There you go.
They're similar. They look similar. They sound similar, but no, they're brothers.
Oh, there you go. I totally got that wrong. Ignore me.
Very good. All right, let's move on to the next release in the list from the Big Finish website that was released in November. That's Torchwood Bad Connection.
From Big Finish Productions, Torchwood Bad Connection.
Hello, who is this?
Don't hang up.
I'm sorry?
Red phone box on Penarth Pier.
Oh, that's right. But why?
Listen, I need your help.
Are you in trouble?
No, you are. There's something outside.
On the pier?
It's dangerous. Please just stay on the line.
My God, what is that?
You see it now, don't you? I'm afraid it's really there.
We don't have fanged giant insects at South Wales. If we did, well, they'd be on the news. Oh, somebody's coming. Oh, Helen Hancock!
Oh, God!
Big Finish, for the love of stories.
And we were both interested in listening to this one because we both love Indira Varma, and it was interesting that she, in the extras, she pronounced her name. She said, "Oh, I'm either Indra or Indira," so she gave both pronunciations as correct. So either one of those you can call her. She doesn't sound like she minds. So this one's stars Jason Watkins as well, who those of the television series would know him from Nightmare in Silver. And quite a few other shows he pops up into on television. So an interesting face to finally to have on radio. So this was an interesting story most of it set in a phone booth, which is a good start. The only disappointment I had was that most of the episode Indira's voice sounded like it was on a phone line. I would have liked to have heard her voice more, but you did get her appearing at the end of it, so that was fine. We didn't have her on the phone the whole time. But what were your thoughts on the story?
Yeah, well, this was one of the really classic creative ways of doing things. I'd almost want to call it a two-hander, except for the fact that 10 other people appear for 30 seconds each. So it's probably not quite like that, but on the whole, it really is just a two-hander between two very talented actors. It was interesting. It was interesting to hear because I'd always say Indira because I'm Western, but obviously Indra is the correct Indian way of saying her name. But she's obviously very understanding about the fact that we often don't get that right. Indra is just astounding in it. It's a character I really like. She's not as nasty and manipulative as she often can be as a character. In fact, she's a pretty normal Torchwood character here, who is still awful. Don't get me wrong, because all the Torchwood characters, they're not nice people, and they're
not angels, are they?
And they're not angels, and they are prepared to use people and let people die for the greater good. And certainly here, that's the case. Is what she's willing to do or not do for protecting other people. And when you start to work out what she's really doing, it is sort of, oh yeah, that's not nice. But it's very Torchwood. It's a very typical Torchwood story, very creative, and just the interplay between two characters. And just a conceit, once again, a phone call, having to explain what's going on so that as an audio listener, you were fully gripped by it all. And you had the picture beautifully. You had the mist, you had the people, you had the wharf. I could picture it all in my mind. I saw this whole show beautifully.
Yeah. I also got a sense of the sort of solitary feelings that she had as part of the Torchwood team. She sort of felt separate from the team all the way from the start. You got that in the TV series, but you got that here as well. She was still quite tortured as a Torchwood team member. A tortured Torchwood team member. There you go. But yeah, very enjoyable stuff, as the Torchwood monthly range always is. Now,
really, Aaron Lamont, as I was going to say, Aaron Lamont hasn't written a lot of stuff for Big Finish. In fact, I'm not sure what else he's done at all.
I just had a quick look at that. He's done a lot of Dark Shadows. He's done one of the some Benny. He's recently wrote an episode of VAM PD.
Vamped, yep.
So yeah, done a few things here and there, but mostly Dark Shadows. So yeah, he does the horror kind of stuff. So he does that quite well.
Great new writer of the Torchwood range, I think.
For sure.
From Big Finish Productions, Doctor Who, The Seventh Doctor Adventures, The Doctor and Karnaki.
Doctor! Thomas Karnaki, how good to see you again. What's wrong, Arkwright? Arkwright? The house is gone.
It's come back.
It's me. It's who? Mark?
Karnaki. Before our first encounter, I assume.
You were not my introduction to strangeness.
Does it have a name?
I've only ever known it as the house.
It must be stopped. Perhaps you'll give me a tour of your laboratory when this is all over.
Oh, one academic to another, yes?
Of course. Karnaki, all set?
As set as one can be.
Then we'll be off.
I trust you to get this beastly thing sorted, Karnaki. You always do.
That's exactly my concern, which is why we're going back there. Better armed and better prepared.
Back to the belly of the beast.
Perhaps you weren't telling me the whole story before. In my experience, the past is best left to its own devices.
I caused this, Doctor. I'm going to fix it.
There are funny marks on the sand which weren't there when we walked past just now.
There's something else. Something watching. A strange, malignant shadow.
Good afternoon. And what's your name?
It's Price, sir. Sergeant Winston Price.
I see. And the year? The month? The nation?
1936, sir. November, sir. Great Britain, sir.
Oh.
I don't like it when they go quiet. It means they're getting closer. They'll surround us again, and they'll just keep on picking us off.
Whatever is out there, I'm sure it isn't just grass and trees and a water.
By all that's holy.
That's it! Come on! Run! Some force, some higher power Star is taking control of her. An animated cadaver.
Big Finish, for the love of stories.
Now, here's one that I wasn't quite 100% sure of going into it, but it was released when we had Sylvester with us, so I was thinking about this when we were with him, and that's the Doctor and Carnacki, which is the Seventh Doctor meeting up with, and I knew nothing about the character of Carnacki, didn't even know if it was a fictional or a historical character, but totally fictional character. And I was really, really impressed with these three stories because you've got Dan Starkey as the older Carnacki on the front, but we've also got a younger Carnacki who is intertwined within the story. So there's three stories. The first one, we're sort of dealing mostly with the young Carnacki. Dan Starkey comes into it a little bit. In the middle one, we've got both the young and the old Carnacki, and then the old Carnacki and the older Carnacki in the final story as well. I really liked all these stories. A.K. Benedict is great, and Georgia Cook's putting out some good stuff at the moment too. This is not the only story she'll release this month, and I was very impressed with another of her stories that I'll talk about later. But Jonathan Barnes does this period so well because he does a lot of the classics adaptations, and he does a bit of Sherlock Holmes, does he?
Sherlock Holmes, that higher language he gets.
Yes.
He did one of the masters. He just gets that formal high language. And so I just love to listen to his words. It's not language that anyone would speak today, but it just captures and evokes the Victorian period, a time's past. And it's just this, it's almost like, it's not Shakespearean because it's not quite that, but it is a higher language which you don't use. And that's what part of it I love the Sherlock CDs is because the beauty of the language that Jonathan writes. And yeah, this is another example, as was in the War Master.
It also made me go and have a look into Carnacki, the character. So it's basically a set of short stories that was released in the 1910s. And I think there are a couple of other stories too, but mostly the short stories called Carnacki the Ghost Finder, written by this one particular author. The name of him escapes me at the moment. But so I had to go back and do a bit of research on that. I found a free version of all the short stories that Dan talks about reading. They must have released it on Big Finish years ago. Did they do that? Or was it for someone else? Did he do it for Audible? I don't know. But there was on my Kindle account, there was a free download of all the short stories. So I've got those on my Kindle to read. So this is another example of Big Finish and Doctor Who in general, making me go back and discover things that I hadn't discovered before. So it's really good. I think it really suits the Seventh Doctor well, this kind of period. You can see the ghostlight type house in the background of the cover art. And I like the Doctor's outfit in this. So it's sort of towards the end of his regeneration. And it suits him really well. I like it.
I think Sylvester been saying how much he actually likes this period of the Doctor. And so he likes doing the Big Finish. As much as he likes working with others, he actually does like being the Doctor alone. So yes. I think I agree. I also researched Carnacki. I assumed he was a real person. I was rather surprised he wasn't. He was just a fictional character. Can I say the only thing I don't like about the box set is the name. I actually don't like Carnacki as a name for the box set.
Okay.
To me, it doesn't inspire me to want to listen to this box set at all. I am so glad I did. Sylvester is fantastic in it. The stories are brilliant.
Yes.
But just the box set called Carnacki, it doesn't sound Doctor Who-ish at all. It didn't inspire me to want to listen. And a few of the box sets recently coming out from Big Finish are just picking a title from one of the stories or, not inspiring to listen to, but can I say it is worth getting. It is Sylvester McCoy being fabulous. It is three great writers. The sound design and the soundscape is magnificent. I listened to all three of these with headphones on. Really enjoyed them. So, but just my only true thing would be, don't like the name of the box set.
I wonder if that's what made me a little bit ho-hum about it before I listened to it. But I'll tell you what, after I listened to it, it's like, I hope there's more, to be honest.
Yeah, with Carnacki?
Yeah, that'd be great. Although it kind of if you're going through his whole sort of history in the box set, maybe they've closed the door. But I'm sure there's more options to get in there. Big Finish is good at doing that, aren't they?
If it sells, they'll find a way in.
You have 15 hours to apprehend him.
15 hours. Love a countdown.
From Big Finish Productions, Doctor Who, Once and Future, the final act.
But what's she after? What does she want? Is there a price on my head?
I need background. Who is he? And what has he done?
He is a war criminal. One who has corrupted Earth's timeline, destroyed the final gallery, invaded the very hall of Time Lord Immemorial.
You have got to be kidding me.
You must be Vienna.
The place is called Vienna, so smart guess.
And I have no idea who you are.
Professor Summerfield? Bernice? But you can call me Benny. We're very good friends in some life or another.
I require your armed forces for a battle.
And where is this battle?
It is vital we arm ourselves.
Ford? You kidding me?
This is ridiculously dangerous.
These villains have cannons of light.
Somebody's attempting a time ram.
They've played us for fools, haven't they?
Big Finish, for the love of stories.
No matter how calmly my day starts, it always ends with running.
Okay, let's go to the next release on the list, and this was Once and Future, the final in the 8 CDs coda, and it wasn't announced who was actually in it for quite some time. It was only maybe 6 months ago that we found out that was going to be the first appearance of Joe Martin on Big Finish, teaming up with the Ward Doctor. Well, maybe not teaming up so much as the story goes. We've also got the Vord, got Bernice Summerfield, Queen Elizabeth. And I went into this thinking, cause I'm not hugely enamored with that particular era. I did always like Jo Martin as the Doctor and her portrayal as the Doctor. I thought she was very good, but I was concerned as to what they were going to do with the story. But I was very surprised and impressed with what they did with the story. They've opened it up, made it, given a lot more questions to answer about who exactly is the fugitive Doctor. There's some throwaway lines in here and there that if you listen to them, it just makes more mystery. So it doesn't take away from those who like the proper history of Doctor Who, but it creates questions for going forward. And the performances of Jo Martin and Jonathan Carley as the Doctors in this set in particular just are sensational. They work so well because they're basically going head to head in this one. It carries on straight after the last Once and Future story called The Union. And that was kind of all tied up, but it goes directly from that into this story and an interesting little coda, as it were. What were your thoughts on this one, Philip?
You know, I really enjoyed it too. I mean, I don't like the whole Townless Child idea at all. And Jo Martin's performance, I thought, was one of the highlights of Jodie's era. And so I was interested in Big Finish were doing stuff with her, how they'd take it. It very much is a whole era now of Doctor Who.
Yes. Like,
you really... The Big Finish isn't saying she's the Timeless Child. They're not trying to put her before William Hartnell. No. They realise that so many of us fans would just hate that if they did that.
Yeah.
That we weren't happy that Chibnall did it, and we all found reasons for why it wasn't the case. Like, why would she have a TARDIS as a police box if she was before William Hartnell? Not possible. So Big Finish is deliberately just leaving those questions open while giving us a great actor and a great Doctor performance. So it really is a new Doctor Who with the Fugitive Doctor. Jonathan Carley does a great War Doctor. It's bizarre, isn't it, that really this is a whole CD of people who Jonathan Carley is playing, someone who died, John Hurt's character, the War Doctor who we didn't know existed, Fugitive Doctor we didn't know existed. But it's all held together, I think, in some ways by Benny. I think Bernice Summerfield, Lisa Bowerman helps hold it all together.
Yeah.
But also extraordinary performances by Jonathan Carley and Jo Martin that they're just so believable. Yes. That we're getting to know these characters. So I'm really excited now about the Fugitive box sets coming out soon.
Me too.
Really excited to see what Jo Martin does.
I didn't think I'd be saying that, but I am. I'm curious and, dare I say, slightly excited. Yeah.
Yeah. And for those with the ears to listen, Sylvester McCoy spent a couple of days with her in Chicago, just having left Australia, and told her how fantastic and wonderful Australia was, and that she should come out. So who knows what could happen?
Who knows
there?
what could happen, eh, Philip? You just can't control yourself, so anything
I
could
can't
happen.
control myself. Anything could.
Of course, we also had Vienna too. She's not on the cover, so I'm looking at the cover, but Chase Masterton is in this one too. So you've got Benny on one side, Chase Masterton on the other side, the two doctors going at each other. It's really good. If you like Vienna, if she's your cup of tea, then you're going to like this one. Yes. I liked all of Once and Future. I found it a little bit confusing at times, but when you put it all together, I think it's a solid set of stories, an enjoyable set of stories. Even if people say it's a shopping list of this and of that, I think you've got stories like Two's Company with Harry and Jackie and Lady Christina. Beautiful stuff. That was one of the highlights that I was just thinking.
When we went back and listened to the whole series again, and we did an episode on it, I really enjoyed it, going back and actually listening to them all in order. They all made sense. They all fitted together, and they just glorify Doctor Who and the different characters and the different actors. So, sorry, who can't love it? A Big Finish celebration. It was over the top and huge, but it all fits together really nicely. Just listen to it in one go.
Yep. Now, I just want to talk about a release that you didn't get a chance to listen to, and that was Gallifrey Echoes Through Eternity. It was released towards the end of the month, and it's in the short trip style. So instantly, when that's not one of your favourite ranges, I know that, but I've got to say that this is absolutely amazing. It's done as a 20th anniversary to Gallifrey. It's a love letter to Gallifrey. Heather Challin's, this is her idea, and it was a great idea. There's two stories written by... No, is it two stories? No, let me have a look. Let me just have a look and get this right. There are, two stories written by Gary Russell. He writes the opening one, Damned If You Do, and then the last one's called Damned If You Don't. So what it does is all these stories, these short trips, are set in different time periods during the Gallifrey story. Because if you've been following Gallifrey from the start, like we have, you'll know that series 1 to 3 is in the set period. Then you've got series 4, 5, and 6, which is another period. Then you've got Intervention Earth, which is another period again. And then you've got the War Room, which is another period. So those, I think there's even one or two more eras in Gallifrey. Oh, there's the Time War as well. Gallifrey Time War is out there too. But all four of those stories are set in a different time. So the first one is set right back when Narvin was grumpy and grouchy and didn't like Leela and Romana. So if you liked, because Narvin is probably the most popular character from the Gallifrey series. At Brisbane, there was someone cosplaying as Narvin, believe it or not. So people are cosplaying an audio character. This is amazing that a character can be created that people cosplay like this. That story's set there. Theo Trethewey and Georgia Cook, who I mentioned before, wrote a story that's read by Miles Richardson, set in one of the alternative Gallifreys from series 4 or 5. I think it was it 4 or 5? 5, I think.
5, I think.
Yeah, so that was an interesting box set where every episode was a different alternative Gallifrey. So this is another one of those. In Search of Lost Time, Una McCormack does this story, read by Sophie Aldred. And this is set during the Intervention Earth period, which is I really loved it. Sophie Aldred, as I was going through this, because, I haven't heard too many of her audiobooks, but listening to this, I'm thinking I want to go and seek out just some of the random stuff that she's read. She's so good at doing audiobooks. The last one, Damned If You Don't, by Gary Russell, that's set during the War Room period, and it's read by Sean Carlson again as Narvin. So you've got the two Narvins bookending this set. And then there's a fantastic 50-minute documentary afterwards. Gary spends a lot of time on that, talking about Gallifrey, where it started, and the history all the way through to the end. Heather's on there too, talking about it, plus the writers and the readers. So I think it's a really nice love letter to 20 years of Gallifrey, which is a series that we're going to be talking about right from the beginning very soon. Philip, you'd be glad to know.
I'm looking forward to that. Well, listen, I haven't had a chance to actually listen to these 4 yet, which I'm a bit disappointed by, but we did have a chance to talk to Gary about it. So let's just see what Gary has to say about his 2 stories. So whose idea was it to do a celebration of Gallifrey and for you to write a couple of stories?
I presume it was either Matt Fitton or Heather Challens. Matt came to me and said, it's the 20th anniversary of Gallifrey. And I sort of hid and went, no, I don't want to hear phrases like that being spoken to me under any circumstances. And so he said 3 or 4 more times, 20 years, Gary, 20 years. And he said, we just want to do this little sort of download short story thing. And he said, will you write 2 of them? Which I was very flattered by. One would have been lovely. To be able to do 2 was brilliant. And he said, and I want you to do both with Narvin. And I was like, excellent. In that case, I can do a before and an after. So we can top and tail. So the first story is set during season 2 of Gallifrey. And then the second story is set pretty much where they are with Gallifrey at the moment. So that was quite fun because I thought immediately, well, they've got to be linked. Something's got to happen in that first story that pays off in the second story. And Damned If You Do and Damned If You Don't came to me as a sort of connecting story title that I quite liked. And it just flowed from there, really. And they left me to it. They were very good. With the second one, Heather did a lot of continuity tweaking because I'm not as familiar with modern Gallifrey as I obviously was with my Gallifrey. And so I put a couple of references into things that I thought, hey, this shows how up to date I am with Gallifrey. And she went, no, it's moved on since then. So she did a few sort of continuity tweaking bits with it, but not for the story, just for sort of character names and things like that. I think I got the wrong president at one point. I think I put something in about Livia and that's moved on, or vice versa. I can't remember which. And boom, that was it. And then Sean went off and he recorded it. And he sent me a couple of questions every so often about how do I pronounce this and how do I pronounce that. And I was going, I don't know. And off he went and he recorded it by himself in his own little home studio. And the next thing, boom, it was out with that beautiful, beautiful Rafe Wallbank cover, which I think is just stunning and is now my wallpaper on my phone.
Yeah, it's a stunning cover.
Brilliant.
Were you aware of the other 2 stories? I mean, they're not really connected,
I knew that Theo and Georgia were doing doing Brax. And I knew the other one, I think it was Una, isn't it? Was doing
That's right.
Sophie was doing Ace. But I wasn't aware of the stories as well. I think at one point Theo said to me, is there anything we need to link in? And I said, no, it's actually quite important for my 2 stories that they're not linked into anyone else. That they are Narvin, alone and lost.
So how does it feel going back to these characters after 20 years, knowing that they're all still so loved by devout fans?
Well, that's part of it, really, is the fact that it's the shock and surprise that 20 years later everybody still loves Gallifrey, which is just so flattering. I think I wouldn't have done it if they hadn't offered me Narvin. Not to say I wouldn't have loved writing for Louise or Lala or Miles or anyone else, but Narvin was the hook. Writing for Sean is always fun because I hear his voice. I hear his Narvin. I know Sean's voice and I know Narvin's voice. And so it just made it for me doing that.
When we're in Brisbane, we were with Sylvester there in Brisbane a few weeks ago, and there was a kid there. It can't have been much more than 20, and he was cosplaying as Narvin. So it's incredible that you've got an audio-created character that people are actually cosplaying. That's how much Narvin has got into the psyche of people. What an amazing character that's evolved over the years.
You go to conventions. I did. I've done obviously Gallifrey in LA a few times. I went to Germany a couple of months back, and the Narvinettes, as they call themselves, are out in force. And there are always people cosplaying different versions of Narvin, and it's just amazingly flattering that something you've had a very small part of creating has inspired people to do their own cosplay and write their own fan fiction about this character as well. You expect it with the TV characters, but when it starts happening to Big Finish characters, I mean, I've also seen I've seen people cosplaying Evelyn Smythe, and I've seen people cosplaying Hex, and you just think, wow, that shows how important everything we did at Big Finish in those early days is to people, and it's still going on today. That's just amazing and enormously flattering. And I, it doesn't do me. It's all to do with the writers and the actors, and what they have put into it is what sparks stuff with all the with the people who love it.
I do think it's interesting with Narvin because he certainly wasn't a nice character to start off with, and yet he's developed, and he's still got all his crotchety side to him, but yet he's overwhelmingly, people still shine to him because of who he is and his character, even though he's very crotchety at times.
He's sort of the ultimate anti-hero, really, and he was. We were very keen at the very beginning, myself and Alan Barnes, that we didn't want to just replicate. We didn't want Castellan Kellner from Invasion of Time, although that's always the springboard for these characters. So we had Van Sell originally, who definitely came from the sort of the Kellner school of annoyingness. And so we needed to make Narvin again as different from Kellner as Van Sell was from Kellner, and different from Van Sell. So I immediately thought, no, we've got to be able to look at him and go, the thing is, he's a complete and utter twat, but he's right. In the rules and the regulations and everything he believes in, he is right. And actually what Romana's doing and what Leela is doing is against protocol and is against everything. And he's not inflexible. I think that was the difference. Van Sell was quite an inflexible Time Lord. And Narvin isn't inflexible. Narvin is just frustrated. And I think there's a lot of me possibly in Narvin and dealing with rules and regulations and the barriers people put up when you're just trying to do something and get your job done. And they go, but could you fill in this 18-page document before you breathe this morning? And I think Narvin represents that in everybody. And I think, therefore, people listening to it can see in Narvin a lot of what they go through in their own lives. And they understand his frustration. And whilst you're instinctively drawn to find that Romana and Leela and K9 are the heroes of Gallifrey, there's this poor guy standing behind them kind of going, yep, that's absolutely fine if you want to blow that planet up, but actually you can't, and would you mind doing this, this, and this instead? And that is actually breaking every law of Gallifrey. And you need people like that in your life. And I think the important thing about Narvin is he was never officious, he was never inflexible, he just wanted everything done right. And you felt sorry for him. You felt he's a comedy character without ever really having any big comedic lines. And I think that's a very clever line to draw. And people like Alan Barnes and Steve Cole and Justin Richards in those early days always managed to get him pitched absolutely perfectly.
Well, congratulations on 20 years of Gallifrey. And it's wonderful to have you at this moment celebrating with us.
Yay!
Well, thanks to Gary for that. That leads us nicely into another love letter that was released in the month of November. It was the Sirens of Time Redux, done by Nicholas Briggs. Now, recently we reviewed the original version of the Sirens of Time, and this one came out in November, late November, and wow, we had spoken to Nick and he told us what to expect, but I absolutely love this. The whole music score has been updated. The edit has been changed so that the individual Doctor episodes have all been merged together. So it sounds like a whole new story almost. It was fresh. I think there was only one line that was cut. I think there might have even been some extra lines thrown in that we hadn't heard before. Correct. You'd have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I really enjoyed hearing this. It was like hearing a brand new story, and it was like no time had passed at all since this. It sounds like anything else that Big Finish would put out. What are your thoughts on this, Philip?
Well, people have listened to a couple of weeks ago when we talked about the original would know how much I loved the original and how much I thought it created the whole range. And speaking to Nick, which you'll hear soon, I was a little sceptical about it all being merged together because I really love each Doctor having their own story, giving them their own space. But as soon as I listened to this, it won me over. The way that he's edited together the 3 stories across the first three episodes, and how the climax builds, so you actually get, in some ways, a more powerful cliffhangers, because you've got 2 or 3 stories merging into something important that's happening. It was brilliant. And I mean, he holds back the 6th Doctor a bit, so it's really Doctor 5 and Doctor 7 for most of 1, and then in comes 6. And just the way he's played with the time and played with the stories and interwoven them, it's a brilliant redo of what was a great story. And I don't know which I prefer, and I probably would need to sit down in a month or two's time. I want to listen to them one after the other and have it and try and think, do I have a preference? But this was such a fresh undertaking. As you said, the music score is sensational. The way, I mean, his own skill as a musician has improved so much, but the way he captures these love letters to the periods, Peter Davison stuff, it was just so 5 Doctors.
It's like season 20 music, wasn't it?
Yeah, I thought, oh, it's reproducing the whole 5 Doctors score. Well, not the score, but that whole theme. It was just so evocative.
For the 6th Doctor, I was hearing Revelation of the Daleks. For the 7th Doctor, I was hearing Curse of Fenric. Everything on Gallifrey had the organ music going from Deadly Assassin. It was just wonderful. Just wonderful.
Yeah. So an amazing love letter to 25 years of Big Finish. Unbelievable. I don't know where 25 years has gone. It's making me feel very old.
Well, as I said, we chatted with Nick about this recently, so we'll share that chat with you right now.
So once again, we're very privileged to have Nicholas Briggs with us. Nicholas Briggs, thank you for joining us.
It's a great pleasure. Lovely to see you both.
Now, recently, of course, we're celebrating the 25th anniversary of Doctor Who with Big Finish, and there's been lots of celebrations happening. One of the first things we want to talk to you about is the Sirens of Time. So you've decided to do a remix of the original story. How did that decision come about?
It came about in one of our many creative meetings. That's what we call them, with a capital C. And I think it must have been, I want to say at the beginning of this year. But it might have been the end of last year or even autumn. I'm not sure. And we were talking about what are we going to do about the 25th anniversary of Doctor Who at Big Finish. And years and years ago, one of our sound designers and composers, Martin Johnson, who doesn't do anything for us anymore, but he used to do brilliant stuff. And he said to me that he had this sort of idea for a pet project of his, which he said if I could find the original digital audio tapes of the Sirens of Time and send them to him, he'd completely revamp it from the dialogue upwards, you know. And I said, I don't know. And I said, I don't know where the blooming tapes are. Anyway, that did plant the seed of the thought in my mind. And so when we were having this discussion in the meeting, I thought, you know, if we're going to redo the Sirens of Time, maybe I should be doing it. And so I suggested in the meeting, sort of, I suppose part of me was half hoping they'd say, no, that's a stupid idea, Nick. I said, well, I could do this. And they all went, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. And I said, oh, right, okay. I said, well, I can't do it because there's some debate about when the actual anniversary is. But I said, I reckon I can do it for about November. Actually, I finished it months and months and months ago. But I had it as a background project working on it, you know, almost every day for several months, just every now and again, just going over and having a listen to it. And yeah, so that's how it came up. And everyone was delighted at the meeting. And yeah, it's one of those few occasions where I come up with an idea and everyone likes it.
I'm sure that's not true. So in terms of what do you actually have in terms of when you do the recording? Did you just have all the original vocal tracks? Did you have more than that? What was your core material you're working with?
Well, I went and found the digital audio tapes, which are, you know, those tiny little cassettes, but recorded to digital quality. Not quite sure how that works, but there you go. And the next thing was to find a digital audio tape player that worked, and mine didn't. still got it. I don't know why I've got it. Is it just like a work of art or something? I'll put it on the mantelpiece and look at it. It's too big to go on a mantelpiece. And so luckily, Toby Hritzek Robinson, who does sound design and music for us, who also used to run the Moat Studios where we used to record pre-pandemic, he had a DAT recorder in some storage facility that he keeps, so he had to dig this thing out. And then I went and visited him with the tapes because I thought, I'm not putting them in the post because they are magnetic, and if they get scanned or anything, they could be erased. So I went over to him with a little box and he transferred them all. And what the tapes were, they were all the original dialogue recordings and all the sound design mixed in with the dialogue, and mixes of the finished episodes, mixes of the episodes without music, and additional sound effects, just on their own. Not sound effects beds for each scene, but just the sound effects, so as a sort of library of sound effects that I'd made for the story. So I did have the idea that I would start with just the dialogue and select the takes and put it together as usual. But listening through to it, perhaps immodestly, I felt that a lot of it stood up really well, the individual scenes. And I thought, there's a lot of this that I don't want to change, but I can augment it. I can add to it. There was one scene that the sound effects mix for it now sits at the beginning of episode 4, I think. There's one scene that had not, or maybe episode 3, that the sound effects mix of it hadn't survived because one tape broke and didn't work anymore. So I didn't have that one scene. Bizarre. It's very eccentric ordering of things on the tapes. It was very early days for me dealing with all that stuff. So I had to recreate that from the ground up. But luckily I had all the dialogue for it. But the rest of it is, changed. I think you'll feel that it sounds quite different when you hear it. And also because of the order I've put it in. As you've probably heard, it's now not just an episode per Doctor and the 3 coming together at the end. Now it's the final episode is more or less exactly the same in terms of the order of the story, the order of the scenes. But the first 3 episodes, they go all over time and space. So it starts with Peter Davison on the ship. And then it goes to Sylvester McCoy a couple of scenes later. And then towards the end of the first episode, we encounter Colin Baker's Doctor. So it's very much like the idea is it's almost all happening simultaneously across space and time.
Sarah Murad does an amazing job in her multi-roles across that. Does mixing them together, do you think that gives away the fact that she's the same person, or does it actually hide it better?
But actually, I think it was never meant to be a secret that she was playing all those parts. It was always, you were always meant to think, hold on a sec, isn't that? I thought that sounds like, what's going on here? And it does make it more obvious, but I think that's all to the benefit, and it makes it weirder because you're immediately going from a scene where a young woman on a ship is castigating the 5th Doctor to a scene where Sylvester McCoy is encountering someone who doesn't sound that dissimilar, sinking into a quicksand or whatever, into a bog in a jungle on an alien planet. And so I think it adds to the strangeness and the oddness of the story. And it'll be interesting to see, some people will be listening to it for the first time this way. And it'll be interesting to see what people get from it. I mean, John Ainsworth was the producer for this new version, and he listened to it, and he had completely forgotten the original. And he said, I realize I don't remember anything about the original, and this is like listening to an entirely new thing. So he was a good gauge for it, about, working out whether it still made sense and whether the storytelling was working. I largely just used my instincts about what scene should come next. I spent quite a bit of time fiddling around with the order of scenes and, working out what would complement the preceding scene, not just in terms of plot information, but also in terms of tone and pace and rhythm.
One thing I noticed when I was listening to the original recently for the podcast was that the mix, listening to it in the headphones, it was very much more left and right. There was than you get in more modern Big Finish productions, and I thought that maybe in the early days you were looking at mixing them more for speakers rather than for headphones. Is that something? Is there anything to that, or am I just making that up?
No, you're not making it up. There is a lot more hard left and right stuff going on, I think, in the original Sirens, and I think I might have eliminated some of that in this version. Not all of it, though. I think I was just experimenting, really. I'm not sure I was thinking about speakers or headphones, because you could argue it's not so hard left and right voices aren't so obvious on speakers. They are very obvious on headphones, and sometimes you sort of twitch round when you hear a voice coming from over there, and that could be distracting. But talking about this just makes me remember the equipment I was using, which was so primitive. It was digital. I ended up just giving it to Davy Darlington, actually, when I was chucking out a load of stuff. And he said, I'd be interested in that. It was this black box about this size. And I think it was a Yamaha something or other, 8-track digital recorder. And if you used all 8 tracks, you could only get 20 minutes of material on it. That's all the hard drive had room for. And there was no display. There was a tiny little sort of like LED screen where you would just see numbers and things scrolling across, and all the controls had multiple functions depending on whether you pressed another button at the time. So I was like scrolling backwards and forwards, and I felt like I was sort of using, sonar on a submarine to do it. It was very primitive, and I was limited to 20 minutes at a time, and each episode was longer than 20 minutes. So I had to sort of put in recording breaks, a bit like old Doctor Who. I don't quite understand how I managed it, really, but it's all I knew at the time. It was I think the Genocide Machine, was the first time I used Pro Tools. After episode 1 of the Genocide Machine, I used Pro Tools, which is, multi-track, as many tracks as you like on a high-speed Apple Mac computer. And I remember someone saying to me, "You've got to get Pro Tools." And I said, "Why?" And he said, it was Harvey Summers who actually recorded Sirens of Time. He said, "Because it will blow your mind and change your life." And I've never looked back. To me, Pro Tools is like this magical thing that allows me to, let my weird, dramatic audio dreams come to life. I adore it, and I still haven't exhausted its possibilities, even though I read the manual several times when I first got it. In those days, you'd buy a program and you get a manual this thick. So it's quite exciting to think back to it, actually. But yeah, I was really feeling my way with Sirens of Time. I feel like the audio wasn't as malleable as it is now. I couldn't get hold of it as precisely as I wanted to. So it was quite nice to go back and do that a bit more. And add, hopefully over the last 25 years, I've learnt something.
And of course, even with all this modern technology, we're still wanting to go back to some of that retro stuff too. Like at the time, you're releasing all the audios not just on CD but cassette as well. So, is there a cassette version in the limited edition that's coming out?
Yes,
too?
There is a cassette version. That's our head of marketing, Steve Berry, said. He said, "Oh, we've got to do a cassette of it. Come on." He said, "Even if no one ever plays it, it's just a novelty item, really." So yeah, I don't want the cassette. I've got nothing to play it on. That's right. Hannah, our head of operations, Hannah Peel, she was saying, has anyone got a cassette player? Because we need to do a quality check to see if it's all right. I think Jason said, I think I've got one. She said, right, well, you're doing the quality control listen then.
Yeah, the only cassette player I've got now is one that I can stick into my computer and record it into an MP3.
Oh, yes, actually, I have
it's the only cassette player I've got.
Yeah, I've got 2 sets of drawers down here, the kind you open with a handle, I hasten to add. And I think I've got one. Yeah, I have actually. Look. Look at that. I've got one.
Still in the box.
Still in the box. Well, I put it back in the box. I have used it. But yeah. Wow. Okay. Isn't that weird? I really didn't think I was going to find it then. I just had to displace my electrolarynx to get that out of the drawer. I've got a big old-fashioned desk with drawers down the side.
So have you redone the music for this as well?
Yes, that was the major part of it, redoing the music. Because, as I'm always protesting, I'm not really a musician. But over the years, I've learnt more and more techniques and listened to wise words from composers and I felt that I could do a better job. And it's very different, and it's very... I don't think there's quite as much music. I think I've learnt to shut up a bit with music. I mean, I just re-listened to a bit of Return of the Cybermen the other day, and really, I should have shut up a bit in there. It was just, I was having such fun doing Carrie Blyton music like Revenge of the Cybermen, and it's like every single thought in the script is, I think, oh, for goodness sake, Nick, leave it to the audience to work it out sometimes. So yes, I hopefully I've deployed the music more wisely this time.
Okay, we're really looking forward to it. You've done a reshape, so it's a bit more like your style in terms of jumping around a bit more time, which is of what you excel with. Did you find that you did it much quicker this time than the first originally? Your 25 years of skills, or are you more dedicated?
Inevitably a bit quicker. Yeah, I mean, last time round, I was doing it while I was playing. It was my first encounter with the famous Ken Bentley, one of our directors, and he was directing me in a stage show of the Speckled Band, a Sherlock Holmes play, and I was playing Sherlock Holmes. And this all coincided with when the Sirens of Time needed to be delivered. So I was rehearsing it and then performing it and then coming home and doing the Sirens of Time really late at night a lot of the time, but I was much younger in those days, and you could do an all-nighter then. I think a sound designer said to me the other day, I had to do an all-nighter to do this, and I said, I just can't do that now. I just, I'd be absolutely, in a coma for several days afterwards if I don't get a night's sleep. But we won't talk about the Big Finish 25th anniversary party. But yeah, I suppose I was a bit faster. This time, as I say, I was doing it over a long period of time. And it was like a special little treat every time I returned to it. I thought, I've got a couple of hours now. I'll do a bit more of the Sirens of Time. That would be fun. Yeah. And I love to get things, I hardly ever do this, but I love to get things finished in advance. And I certainly did that with this. It was finished quite a few months ago, actually. So, yeah.
So if you got the chance to go back and do anything else, what else would you like to go back and rework? Is there anything else in the catalogue you think could do another polish?
I think it's all fine. I don't know. What could I do? No, I mean, no, I don't.
Once you got Pro Tools, it was all smooth sailing from there.
Exactly.
I just had a very nerdy question.
Go ahead.
About sound effects. Have you changed many of the sound effects? Because there was one in particular that stood out to me that was not the original sound effect from the TV series, and that was the Three Doctors contact sound effect. Was that changed to sound more like the Three Doctors one, which I've heard in other Big Finish episodes?
No, it's a bit different. but not very different. No, that's
Okay.
very nerdy. Yeah, that was my attempt
Extremely.
at doing the Three Doctors one in the original Sirens of Time, but it
Gotcha.
it was inaccurate. I think I've put a bit of a whoosh in it this time because I think I've truncated it a bit, so I needed it to kind of be a bit more dramatic because it's just this noise. It's not very. It's not a very exciting sound effect, is it? Is that a blasphemy to say that? But,
yes.
No, not really. We disagree.
How dare you insult the Three Doctors noise? Yeah.
Well,
we could do that with our three images here, couldn't we? We could sort of cut between them.
So we're a huge fan of Sirens of Time, so much so we've named a podcast after it. So
I know.
So thank you for re-pushing our podcast by re-releasing the Sirens of Time and make us even more worthy.
That's right. It was all designed actually just to advertise your podcasts.
Yeah, thank you. We knew it. We knew it all along.
We knew it. Listen, thank you once again for your time, Nick. We really appreciate it.
Great pleasure. Cheers.
From Big Finish Productions, Doctor Who, The Sirens of Time, Redux.
Fire torpedo! The High Council of the Time Lords.
The Time Lords?
The High Council of the Time Lords commands you.
Now surrender, Doctors! Surrender!
Hello, listen to me. We are here by accident, but perhaps...
There has to be another way. Don't you see what you're doing is evil?
I didn't see you there.
Evidently. Where did you spring from?
And just who the hell are you, for that matter?
Time Lords.
Your president is dead, Time Lord.
All of space and time was yours for the taking.
You have accurately identified some of my defining traits.
And now all you will know for eternity is subjugation.
What a way to end a geology field trip. Dying of exposure.
We're far from dead yet, Helena.
Now what?
Control here. Report.
I seem to have forgotten the way again.
Sector 8 alert. Sector 8 alert.
Prepare to engage vortex drive.
I can't stop it.
Doctor, it's coming this way!
Let's get a move on, shall we?
Time distortion.
I trust you to fly me stark naked through a cheese grate.
The Time Lords really do want me dead.
There must be no witnesses.
Who are you?
Beware the Sirens of Time.
Big Finish, for the love of stories.
Well, thanks very much to Nick for taking the time to chat with us once again. It's been great to talk to you about these releases. I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say, Philip, about Gallifrey, because I know how much that series means to you, and it really excited me. So I'm looking forward to getting your feedback once you've heard it.
I'll make sure I listen to it for our next release, so I can. I might do that as my what I've been listening to. I'll make sure it's Gallifrey because obviously I need to listen to it.
Excellent. So for our recommendations, you know what we've been listening to. We've been listening to everything, almost, that's been released by Big Finish for the month of November. So we would recommend you go to thebigfinish.com and check it out. See which one of those reviews, those mini reviews that we gave you appeals to you, and have a try. You won't be disappointed. That's for sure.
Actually, you know what? There's nothing this month to be disappointed by.
I agree.
So, yeah. Sometimes we don't mention everything. If we don't think it's good, we just don't mention it. But there's nothing that's been released this month that I wouldn't recommend. So, November, top month, Big Finish. Good
in the Doctor Who stuff, there was some Jerry Anderson stuff, but I have to budget my time, so the Jerry Anderson gets put to the side sometimes. But anyway, that would be very good too if you're an Anderson fan, that's for sure. So, Philip, thank you so much for your company. We will,
and thank you for yours, Dwayne. It's been great.
We'll catch you all next time.
Bye, everyone.
This has been the Sirens of Audio, reviewing the November 2024 Big Finish releases with our guests Gary Russell and Nicholas Briggs, with your hosts Philip Edney and Dwayne Bunny. Theme music by Joe Kramer. Catch up on all the latest info, including news on our live events at sirensofaudio.com. Got some feedback? Send your emails to sirensofaudio@gmail.com, or you can find us on all our social media at Audio Sirens. Thanks for listening, audiophiles. We'll hear you next time.